Matheus, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Really excited to speak with you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited as well.
All right. So, Matheus Riolfi, tell us who you are, what you do. Give us some background here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the co-founder and CEO of Tint. We make it easy for tech platforms to create embedded protection products to address some risk intrinsic to their businesses. So think about Airbnb, right? Like last time you rent an Airbnb, you didn't think about it, but there's insurance going with that transaction. So if anything were to go wrong while you're staying at an Airbnb, either the kids can break the TV or the place can catch fire, whatever it can be, it's all protected. And Airbnb now has a lot of people behind the scenes that make that happen. So what Tint does is like, we provide the same kind of services and technology that enable any company to provide the same kind of protections as people use their products and services.
Okay, very good. So, how did you get into Tint? Were you in insurance before, or like how? What's the startup origin story here?
Yeah, I would like to say that no, nobody got into insurance by choice. There's always some sort of accident. Nobody dreamed about being in the insurance industry when they were five, right? So in my case, I joined this company called Turo, which is in the peer-to-peer car sharing space. So Turo basically helps strangers share cars with one another. And I didn't know, but 90% of my time was spent with insurance. So I was heading up the international expansion and launching the business in different countries, and the hardest part was to figure out the insurance piece. And I think my co-founder at the time, we always talked about starting something together. He was the head of data science, so he was looking at the data, he was looking at the underwriting models that Turo used. So we together saw both the opportunity of like a tech company out of San Francisco that was becoming kind of insurance company in disguise, like Turo. But we also saw how hard it was. It was incredibly difficult to get that working well without having the right partners, without having the right tools and systems. And that's why we started Tent, like really to solve a problem we had and the company we wish existed as we're going through this problems while at Turo.
Okay, so when did Tint launch then?
We launched in January of 2018, so about 5 years ago.
Okay. And am I correct? You went to YC, like YC backed, or
That's right. We were part of the winter batch of 2021, about 2 years ago.
okay. So I'm curious. Like I speak to a lot of bootstrappers, right? Obviously, you went another route, and that seems to be very successful for you. But what made you go like the YC route, seek investors? I see on the website as well. You just secured a 25 million Series A, right? So why that direction as opposed to like bootstrapping?
It's a great question, and we were in the Bay Area. We were in San Francisco when we started, and like as founders, we never ask ourselves this question, which is it's interesting that you're saying that. So we started we raised a pre-seed round even before we had anything, um, and then put us on the venture-backed route. And the reason why we've done that, at least initially, was because we wanted to be able to pay ourselves a little bit of salary and have some resources that would allow us, say, to travel to conferences and be able to do some minimal investment while we were trying to figure things out. But interestingly enough, as I mentioned, we were founded in 2018. We went to YC in 2021. So in this period of time, we raised about $700,000. So we chose the VC route, but we had to bootstrap for a few years because by the time we were not having an easy time raising money from you, raising our seed round, raising our follow-up rounds. So we started VC backed. We went bootstrapped for a few years, and now we're obviously back on the VC track. And I think again the reason was we want to grow fast, right? We're following the Silicon Valley playbook of raise a lot of money, grow fast, but it we I think learn how to do um, the bootstrap route on the way. And today, I would say we are a lot more efficient than traditional venture cap based companies.
Amazing. Okay. Is this your first time founding a company, or do you have previous
It,
experience?
it's not my first time, but it's my first time doing a venture backed
Got it.
startup.
Okay. And is Tint fully remote as well?
Yes, we're fully remote. So my co-founder at the time we started, he is like, "Yeah, let's do it." I just have one thing. I'm going. He's French. He's like, "I'm going back to Paris in a few months. So if we do that, it has to be remote." And that was in 2018, pre-COVID, obviously, and everybody thought we're crazy. We heard many investors saying, "Nobody is gonna give you money. You guys, like, if you're remote, you're gonna have to change that." And well, we didn't, and here we are today. It seems that more people believe the remote can work.
For sure. So are you from the Bay Area? Is that where you live?
I'm in the Bay Area. I'm originally from Brazil.
Okay. Okay. So how is the remote like obviously the remote culture has really changed and accelerated uh everywhere in the world, including the Bay
Mhm.
Area. You can see that in commercial rent vacancies, for example, in San Francisco. So how has the concept of remote work been receptive by like VCs and and venture capital, or VCs and investors, rather? Are they just more like accepting of it? This just is what it is. Like, what's the sentiment you're kind of getting from them?
It's a lot more accepted. As I mentioned, in 2018, there were, I would say, most investors would not give you money as a remote company. They would. There was a red flag. Today, obviously, it's not. It's no longer the case. I do think a lot of them think that in person is better, and they're going to incentivize their startups to be in person. But let's say there are two things that changed, and I don't believe it's going to go back. One is that now they are a lot more comfortable investing in startups that are not in the same city as they are. So again, before COVID, there was this thing of like, especially the early stage investors, they wanted to be around. They wanted to meet you in person for coffee, like every week, every other week, and that was part of the package. This is no longer true. So we can see investors starting to invest in other markets. And then the second thing I think is gonna happen is like they are more comfortable investing in remote companies. So obviously the bar is the same. You have to hit the same milestones. You have to have the same efficiency as a remote company. But I think right now you don't have to convince an investor that if you can show those milestones, it doesn't matter if you're remote or not.
Yeah, totally agree. So tell me about like when you first, actually before that. So what would you say is the biggest benefit you got from uh, like going to YC, for example?
Going to YC was a great experience because now you can see really what good looks like. So while we're going through the batch, you have some founders now from Airbnb, Dropbox, and Stripe like coming in and like sharing their stories with the team, but sharing the real story, right? The known PR version, um, which is very encouraging because you see that even the great companies, they didn't start great, right? Is a path that you get there, and I think it's really a trap, I think, for founders to look at the company as they are today and forget about that. And even the PR version is always more pretty and then some founders can be feel discouraged when they hear that and say like, "Wow, I'm not there yet, therefore my startup's not working," and things like that. When going through YC, like you're reminded that, and you see really close the examples of companies that were never there until they were, and I kind of can follow that. I think YC has also it's a great philosophy on how to run an early stage startup. So I had done, I have, as I mentioned, joined Aturo. I had been at Aturo when I joined in Series A. The company had about 15 employees. When I left, they had over 400. So I had seen the ramp. I had seen how things work in startup, but I think what I had not seen before was the really early days, right? The pre-product market fit, the kind of really 0 to 1 stage. NYC, I think, has probably the best, if not one of the best, methodologies on how to get into those 0 to 1s and kind of being scrappy, being efficient. So I love YC. I think we learned a lot from it.
Amazing, amazing. So I want to talk about more about the team and your role now. So I see you recently you were in Mexico for a company retreat.
That's
How was that?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you do annual retreats with the team then to get together or?
We have retreats, like company-wide retreats, twice a year, and then we have smaller trips, like product retreats or leadership retreats throughout the year.
Okay, very good. So you're the CEO now of Tint. Describe your day as the CEO. Like and I know this question it evolves. Like I can ask you this like a month from now, and your focus will be somewhere else. But um, let's start like right now. What are you focusing on right now? Like where's your attention as CEO right now?
Yeah, and it definitely changes to your point. So, like, I mean, the main topic, I would say, or the main topics probably stay stable in a startup, which is like growth, the team, like culture, and like making sure that there's a healthy dynamic going, which obviously will help create growth. So those are the two main things that are in my mind, have been on my mind. I think what changes the attention like is how we do that. So right now I have kind of the leadership team in place. So my attention is less about executing the work on the day to day. It's more like working with them one on ones, now coaching, kind of communication, so that the company the team is executing. We have about 45 people in our team now, so the team is moving to the right direction. But if you ask me, like 6 months ago, I didn't have part of the leadership, so I was effectively doing their jobs. Like I was the person doing find like an accounting and closing the books and all of this before we hire our head of finance, for example. So I'd say that really the day to day change, but the kind of teams I think continue to be the same.
Okay. So when you say, I want to like dig into that a bit. So with like team and
Mm-hmm.
dynamic and culture, I think that's obviously very important in any company, even more so, I'd say, in a remote team, because I think
Yes.
that's without question a lot more difficult than, seeing everyone face to face every day. So you mentioned like leadership team. So are you mean like you implemented like managers in each department? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, today we have leaders in every department. So product, marketing, operations, finance. They all have leaders who are then managing their team. So again, like there's no more function today at Tint that I need to do myself as the only IC. And again, we were 4 people. So talking about YC, so 2 years ago we were 4 people. So obviously, and I was the only business person in the team. So obviously, I was doing part of with all those leaders are doing myself, like everything. But now, obviously, like as you hire people, then first they can go a lot deeper, and they're much more probably better in what they do than I was. And then also, then my job becomes not doing a little bit of their jobs, becomes working with them, helping them, giving some of the directions so that they can be effective
Yeah.
in their jobs.
So you said 6 months ago you didn't have a leadership team in place in
We didn't
your
have
business?
some of the functions. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
been hiring the leadership team for the last year, I would say. But again, 2 years ago, we were 4 people. So that's kind of give you a sense of how things have progressed.
So I can imagine like the amount of like space you have now just to like let your mind explore and get creative has doubled, quadrupled, call it, now that you have like leadership in place in each part of the business. Um, how has that changed for you now? Like what are you able to do now that you weren't able to do 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think this has been true, I would say, the last few weeks, maybe. Because, again, it takes a while for having a team to kind of working together, understanding each other, being productive. So I've definitely been a lot focused on kind of making sure that that happens. I think I'm excited that I think we're definitely at that stage now. So you're absolutely right. In the last few weeks, I found myself with a few hours that didn't exist in before in my week, and it can be dedicated to those bigger questions of the direction of the company, where the market's going, like things like that. And you calling creative, I would argue that even when you're solving specific problems, you're being creative, but it's a more focused creativity,
Yeah,
if you will. Now I think we have little bit. I have a little bit more time to look at more kind of unfocused or unconstrained creativity.
yeah.
That's for sure.
And how often are you meeting with the leadership team? Is it daily, weekly?
Yeah, we have weekly meetings, and then a more like a monthly deep dive. And then we also have a retreat. So every quarter we get together to do like a quarterly review and quarterly planning. So yeah, I see them like every 2.5 months, give or take, if we don't see them earlier in other meetings or conferences or things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so in the day to day, right? Like everyone's working, doing their thing from home or wherever it is they work. Um, how are you keeping people engaged on a day to day basis? Are there any things you're doing, like I don't know, in Slack or wherever your team lives, for example? How are you building that bond and that culture on a daily basis?
Um, on a daily basis is like, again, I think to me the way I think is we manage by outcomes, and that's the basis of what we do or how we try to solve the daily engagement, or the fact that like we cannot look over people's shoulders and trust and all those things. So for us is trust and empowerment and outcomes, right? Now outcome based uh, culture, which means, I mean, everybody has like things that they are working on. They have deliverables, and they kind of make commitments to the rest of the team, and we expect them to do it. Now, exactly how they do it, it's up to them, right? Like I like to say, if somebody's extremely productive and they can deliver high output and working 2 hours a day, well, good for them, right? Like I don't think I think about an office culture where if the same person can do everything in 2 hours, they will be 6 hours looking at Facebook and their screen just because they have to be physically present. Like in a remote world, you don't have that, right? Like nobody's again looking over your shoulder. Obviously, you size the work, so it's unlikely that something like this happen. But if it were to happen, like we don't have necessarily a problem with this. And how does this translate to the day to day? I think it's a matter of kind of being working teams, having kind of like the outcomes that you need to achieve, and using that as a way to motivate people to like kind of work in a daily basis. But also we learned throughout this process that um, even if we're remote, we still believe that in person is important from time to time. So another thing we do is like we encourage folks to travel and meet. Say you're going to start a new project, like why don't you fly all to the same location, say Paris, and have the kickoff be in person, because that also motivates folks on a daily basis. So then when they split again, they have clear outcomes. They just spend some time together, so they're feeling connected to the rest of the team, and that helps them go through their day to day. So I think like yeah, those are the two ways again:
Yeah.
the
Nice.
outcomes and the person
Yeah,
kind of.
the outcomes totally. I think a lot of remote managers, founders, like understand. Like, yeah, it's not about the hours, but it's about the outcome. Now, just to play like kind of devil's advocate a bit, like I can see how
Mhm.
incentivizing that is for an employee, for example, to work at a remote company, knowing that hey, if I'm efficient and I'm, you know, doing what I got to do, and I can do this. I can do what's expected of me at 8 hours and only 2 hours a day, and I have all this free time now as an employee. That's like amazing. But now on your side, are you thinking, you know what, like this person is able to do this in 2 hours? Like, how can I get them to do more, like be more productive, and spend more time, utilize more hours to get more done? Like, are you thinking about that at all, or you're just like, this is your task, if you can do it in 2 hours, great, enjoy the day?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the I think one of the things we do and is like is set ambitious outcomes, right? So we have ambition. It's part of our culture. We are reinventing the insurance industry, which is like a very large and complicated industry. So by definition, that's going to be a lot of work. That's going to be a lot of challenging problems to be solved. And I think again, realistically speaking, it's very unlikely that somebody can actually do the job in only 2 hours. So this is one aspect. The other aspect I think is, which is more the incentive piece, is now at Tint, everybody will grow as fast as they can. So suppose you can, going back to the 2 hour example, and you have 6 hours, and if you taking initiative, you're feeling with other things, we taking more responsibility, you're gonna grow faster, right? You're gonna get promoted a lot faster. You're gonna get new stock grants. You're gonna get higher compensation. So I always like to say that when you are in a startup like Tint, the main value you get is growth. It's not the salary. The equity could be, meaningful depending on the outcome of the company, but it's more long term. The short term key benefit is growth, and we like to let people, part of the culture of empowering and trusting people, is that you're going to move as fast as you want and you can. So that person, I mean, typically we see that the best performers, they get more responsibility. That's kind of how they move faster.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense for sure. So what type of companies, like who's your typical customer? Like you mentioned the like Airbnb, Turo type of companies, but um, like what kind of segment is the majority of your customers in?
Yeah, we can typically our customer base is they are tech companies, and they can be in pretty much any vertical. But the ones that we're seeing a lot of success with are shipping. So any digital platforms that enable uh, folks shipping items, like from cars to furniture to like e-commerce purchase parcels, things like that. So, for example, we work with a company called Uship, which is in the kind of shipping space. We work a lot with vacation rentals. So all the kind of short-term rental use cases like Airbnb. Again, Airbnb is not a customer, but all the companies, they are in the same space doing similar things. We are strong with marketplaces in general. So again, because of our background, we came from Turo. Our COO was the head of insurance at Airbnb, so we really understand the dynamics of different marketplaces. So, for example, we have a company uh, that works with us. One of our customers is called Neighbor. So they are like an Airbnb for storage. So if you have an idle place in your garage or an idle bedroom, and you can rent it out to people to just leave their things. So, no, overall, we work with innovators, we work with companies who are creating something new, and that probably creates some new risk that's not well understood by the market, new intrinsic risk. And then we help them turn that into profitability and a great customer experience.
Makes sense. So I'm sure you think about, you're on this podcast, for example, you're thinking about sales and marketing. That's kind of one of the hats I'm sure that you wear. Um, so how, B2B, that's a space you're in. Like how you guys
Mhm.
do sales? Like how are you approaching sales? Is it, do you have a sales team, inbound, outbound? What's kind of the flow of sales look like in your company?
We do have a sales team. So right now we only use a direct channel. So we have now a head of sales and a sales team who actually are going out and in conferences and running some kind of outbound routines and like the normal tools that you can imagine to get your customers. We are starting to invest a lot on content because again, insurance is this area that is not very well understood, and frankly, a lot of companies don't never thought about that as a way to improve customer experience, make money. And embedded insurance, which is the overarching category where we operate, is a very new space. So this term is probably 2 years old. So there's a lot of like education. So that's why we also investing a lot of kind of content marketing, and we're gonna start doing a lot more on the area.
You mentioned like cold outbound sales. Like, all right, so do you have like a sales team like actually doing cold outreach to companies directly as well?
We do, yes.
Okay, okay. And what's a typical sales cycle look like? Now, for example, I'm used to more like small ticket item sales, B2C, like small like B2B slash C, like that very small, less than $100 a month segment, which are quicker sales cycles. Like, what does your sales cycle look like?
Our sales cycle is more on the enterprise side, in a sense that our customers, they're not necessarily enterprise, but the decision of making insurance a feature of your product is a decision that like, requires you to make a few changes sometimes in your business model. So we're probably closer to what you would expect in an enterprise sales cycle. But the beauty of our model as well is that it's very sticky. So when you work with a customer, you get it ready, they're seeing the results, they it's kind of very clear what is the ROI of the product, because they see more profits, they see higher conversion, so they can easily understand how it is good for us. And then we see that our customers, like, they not only stay, but they are demanding a lot more products. So we have a few examples of them. We had one initial protection product with them. They launched, they work. Now they're asking for the second, the third, and then we will continue to grow with them. So that's why it's okay that we have a more kind of enterprise sales motion.
Yeah. So I feel like everyone has their own, you're CEO, right? You're overseeing the entire company, but do you gravitate towards a particular part of the business or department, like sales, marketing, for example? Like, what do you kind of gravitate towards? What's your thing?
Yeah, the last of the leaders that we hired was the head of sales, and that was by design, because we really wanted to be like, I was the one running all sales. I sold pretty much every single dollar that we have in revenue, and we did leave the sales head of sales for last, so we could learn. Where I could be very close to our customers, and like as we were trying to figure out product market fit, really understanding it and then getting the feedback firsthand. And now we believe we're in a place where we have a kind of more stable solution. We can start kind of replicating in the sales motion a bit more, and bring a quote unquote professional that can not only improve but then scale the sales team. So I used to spend a lot of my time, because of this, I used to spend a lot of my time in sales. But now with this transition, I'm going to start balancing a bit more between the different areas of the business.
Nice. Do you share revenue numbers at all?
We typically don't share, but I would say we are growing. Like our volume, which is our biggest kind of North Stars, has been growing about 4 to 5 times a year in the last
Nice.
few
That's
years.
awesome. That's great. So you glazed over this, but the reason I asked, like you single handedly like closed the like all the revenue in the company starting out. So like, how did you do that? Like someone listening is like, okay, that's amazing. So like what exactly did you do? Like, can you walk us through some of your strategies then?
Yeah, so I mean, we what I've done is like, I think what all founders do, right? Like um, start like talking with as many people and companies as possible, learning from them, and then kind of help build the product that they want. So, but I think what we did is, and I recommend every founder does if possible, is that we really leveraged our network and expertise in the early days. So as I mentioned, we now have a few customers. They are marketplaces, and we came from a marketplace background, and we started even more narrow in the car or car sharing or vehicle space. because coming from Turo was a lot easier for me to sell to other companies in the space when we had nothing, right? Like no product, we're just selling an idea at the time. Than if I started to go to a completely new, verse, say, oil and gas that like I have really no experience. And then as you build a product, as you have track record, and then it becomes easier and easier to expand to other verticals. So that's really, if I have to summarize what we've done, I think that will be the case. Because other than that, is like talking folks, trying to understand their needs, kind of like sell. I've never sold before, so I had to learn how to do it. But but again, I think I was focusing on folks like me or other founders in tech platforms. So like, I really knew their language, I knew their problems. We could have some credibility. So I'd say that was the most powerful thing that we did in the early days. And we can now, like we currently have customers in 12 different verticals. So we have expanded past our origins. And I can see it's harder, right, as you go further and further from your expertise. But again, I think the company now is in a different moment than it was
Yeah.
when we started.
So yeah, amazing. So when you say like at the beginning, just like speak to as many customers as possible, like how did you do that? Like LinkedIn, like face to face conferences, like what did that actually mean?
Yeah, so it is exactly that. It's like leveraging your network to get to the folks you want to talk about. So again, maybe stepping back, I stayed 4 years at Turo, as I mentioned in my previous job. And one of the things I was looking for while I was there and I was actively doing was building a network in this space, right? So as I mean, I'm originally from Brazil. I came here to go to business school. So I knew nobody in the US. I had to start really from scratch. And my time at Turo was the way that I saw, like, I was looking for really three things there. A network. I was looking to like learn how a world-class startup looks like. And the last part, which is last but not least, is that just building some savings on the personal side so that I could, as a founder, take more risks, personal risks on the financial side as well. So I think like by the time I left Turo after the 4 years, I checked all those boxes, and that was what kind of really helped me starting Tint, right? So that those are the doors and the connections that helped me get started. For example, our first customer was Outdoorsy, which is a peer-to-peer RV sharing marketplace. They are now a unicorn today. And the person who hired us at Outdoorsy worked with us at Turo. So obviously they run a full process. We had to jump all the hoops that you would expect from any vendor, but we had that original kind of beachhead inside the company. So that's part of why I always tell founders that like that's the practical reasons why you should start with something is because not only you have the credibility, but it's likely that you will have the network, the first doors to go knock. And then if what you're selling actually has demand, it should be a little bit of a snowball effect. Like from there, you're going to start getting more validation that enables you to go like further away from your domain expertise.
Yeah. Love it. So you mentioned you didn't know sales. You didn't have a sales background. You had to learn it. Um, I personally think sales is the most important skill set that a founder, like a new founder, should learn, because it's something that just like stays, like you're always selling, whether you're selling initially to get
Mhm.
customers, whether you're selling um, like employees, recruiting, like encourage, like selling in a way to existing team members, to keep motivated. Like all this is a form of salesmanship, I think, but obviously done in like a genuine way. Um, but like, what do you think is the most important skill set for you as a founder, and to other founders listening?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say one. I think as a founder, you gotta be well rounded or maybe like, at least to me, I would say my main skill is being able to speak all languages inside a company well, right? Like I can sit down with a developer. I mean, I don't do that anymore, but like I could write code. I could sit down with a developer and kind of help them think through any issues that are happening. I can think about marketing, think about sales, and understand finance and P&L and things like that. So I wouldn't say that like sales is the most important, but I would agree that it's mission critical. I think, especially in the early days, I think you're right that the founders are always selling. They will continue to do the same. And you didn't mention selling to investors, which is fundraising, which is again, it's
Exactly.
another huge piece of the founders' work. So I do agree that sales is mission critical, but I also think that a founder should learn all the different things. You see that especially on, say, a technical founder, right? Like the, she or he can be very good at a certain technical problem, but then some of them may have a hard time transitioning to like a kind of founder, more kind of CEO role, because then you have to learn the rest, right? You have to learn the sales part, you have to learn the marketing part, finance, like HR, and all those other things. And I think the folks who can learn the other parts the fastest, they're probably gonna have a higher probability of success.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. There's a lot of things for sure. Um, s you, how are you leveraging AI right now? It's obviously hot topic around the world for investors, specifically for companies trying to think about like how to utilize AI in their own companies. Um, what are you seeing in your particular industry right now with AI?
Yeah, well, our name or our kind of domain is tint.ai, right? So some folks to this day still call us tint.ai, which is interesting. So we kind of been a journey on the AI part. So obviously AI is a core component of our business. And you know, we believe that insurance ultimately is a data business, right? It's a data business wrapped into some legal and regulatory, which are mission critical. But the core, and it really boils down to the data stuff. So that's why we started as a AI company. Our first kind of AI application was um, using machine learning to help companies predict the risk. So let's say Outdoorsy has a transaction. So you want to rent an RV, and in real time, they would use us to predict whether or not this transaction has a high risk of an insurance claim. So let's say an extreme example, you're renting a big RV around Burning Man time in the same location as Burning Man, and you know, and you are 25 years old. Like, okay, this is obviously a very high risk transaction, but you know, there are many factors that go, and we use AI and machine learning to help Outdoorsy figure out what's behind that. So that was our kind of first application, and it's still a core part of our platform. This kind of real time kind of risk management or risk scoring capability. And now we're starting to see with the GPT part, like more and more applications from like customer support and claims. So let's say if you file a claim from your Airbnb stay and you say, oh, this TV is broken. And no, in theory, you can just have a photo of TV before and after, check a few things and say, okay, that's a legit claim. Let's pay the TV. So I see that the AI, the GPT capability is really going to impact two parts in insurance: the customer success support, sorry, the customer support part, and also the claims adjusting part. So we're very excited because, you know, we have all the data infrastructure, we have all the technology that is required to store the right information in the right way that we can apply AI on top. So we should now be able to make a lot of progress and have more exciting things to share in the next 12 months or so.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that's amazing. So, are you currently integrating with like OpenAI or Chat GPT or?
We are not integrated yet. I think we are definitely exploring some of the applications of the OpenAI. I think everything that is machine learning based that I mentioned before, this is, yes, this has been in production, and I'm sure it has been used a few times since we started talking about it on our customer side. But the AI, the GPT component. It's something that we are working on right now.
Nice. That's awesome. How do you see AI? Like this might be obviously a very difficult question to answer. I think just because like I don't recall, I don't think there's ever has been any technology in history that is just moving at the speed that AI is. Like we're talking like day by day. Like there's like massive enhancements and improvements, like use cases. Where is this heading, in your opinion?
Yeah, it is absolutely hard. It's hard to tell. I tend to believe that AI it's gonna be a bit like computing. It's gonna change the world, right? But it's still gonna be something that like it's gonna support humans. It's gonna enhance humans' ability. So Steve Jobs has this famous quote that a computer is a bicycle of the mind. I think AI probably is going to be the airplane of the mind, or like something that is even better. But I still believe that it's going to be mostly of supporting and enhancing kind of human creativity and taking care of like maybe some of the lowest value add tasks that we are not the best ones to do it, and help us focus more on the kind of high level things that require more kind of, I wouldn't say cognition, but more reasoning. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I think you can definitely see smart people everywhere in the spectrum, from the singularity, it's going to be exponential and AI dominates the world, to it's just a fad. It's going to go away. Like the same way, the way I think about it's thinking about self-driving cars, right? When I joined Turo, so that was around 2014, there was all the hype about self-driving cars that like by the end of the decade, there'll be no more cars on the road. Right? You know,
Yeah.
people were asking Turo these questions like, so you do car rental, you're gonna how you're gonna disappear in 10 years because nobody will rent cars. It's gonna be all self-driving Uber style. And here we are, right? And like self-driving cars are far from, even though the tech made a lot of progress, we are far from mainstream adoption. Even electric cars, like so, I think that to me the technologies they tend to be to like tend to take a lot longer than people think to get mainstream adoption. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the framework I use.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, as much as like positive you can see for like for humanity and like people, I can also see in another way it can kind of reduce the people's ability to use like critical thinking because like kind of like don't even have to now like put in whatever your thoughts are into one of these platforms and you're gonna get like an amazing response that doesn't require your own brain, so in a way I could see that as, you could see that at both, like you can see a positive but also as like a negative to like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think then there's absolutely risks, and I think you're right. But to me, this is like think about cab drivers, right? So I don't know if you've been to London or you know that in London there was this like infamous exam for taxi drivers in London where the taxi driver needs to memorize every single street in London. There was even like a kind of point of proud like for taxi drivers, and then GPS came, right, and then Uber came, and then in that case like anybody can be on the road without knowing, like the two of us could fly to London and start driving right after we arrived because the technology took that kind of very specific knowledge and put it on the software. And then we can argue here, like, is it really a good skill and does improve cognition to know every single street in London? And my answer is probably not, right? So I think there will be many places like that. And I think that's where AI is going to shine and it's just going to do like AI is better than humans in calculating calculating routes based on traffic information. And there's no point of us trying to beat that. But is it better than starting a company and talking with a lot of people and figuring out the problem to be solved and going there and try? And the answer is no, right? Not today, at least. maybe never. We'll see.
We'll see. Indeed, at the rate of this, who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
We will see. So, like, you're a CEO of a very fast growing company. When did you secure the Series A? I saw that on your website, but when was that made official?
We closed about a year ago, a
Oh,
year and
okay,
2 months.
awesome. Are you so what's the like the 5 year plan? Are you like IPO exit? Like where are you guys heading?
Yeah, in the next 5 years, we want to keep growing and making progress towards kind of our vision of making insurance a feature and not a product. Like, we believe what we're doing can be transformational. We believe with embedded insurance, with this idea that the brands and the products you love are the places you're going for kind of the protection you need, the insurance you need. Like, that idea changes how the insurance industry should operate. Like, it changes everything. It changes who creates the product, when, how is distributed, what data is used. So really, like, ultimately, what we're doing is creating the infrastructure that's going to power this kind of new world. So if things work as we expect, in 5 years, we should have a much bigger impact than we have in the world, and you should see fewer Geicos and fewer kind of annoying advertisements on the radio and on TV, and more like, Airbnb or Uber or your airline kind of offering the protection as part of what you're doing. So again, I think and going back to the bootstrap versus VC route question that you asked earlier, we believe that, like, yeah, this opportunity is so big that we need additional capital, we need additional fuel to grow faster, which would be very unlikely that we could do that with pure bootstrapping.
Yeah, makes sense. And like for you personally now, as the CEO of this company that's moving fast and the high ambition to grow, how what are you doing on a personal level to stay sharp, mentally focused? What are you doing outside of work in terms of, like, what are you consuming, reading? Like, what's your thing?
I think the main thing for me is my family. So I have a 3-year-old daughter now, and my wife is also a founder, so she also has kind of all these pressures on her side. But to us, it's like going back to our family, right? I um, I think that's kind of what grounds me, and then what reminds me there are other importance, or other things in life that is arguably more important than my job, than what I do at Tint. And that's really what helps me, because I mean, one of the key, and it's easier said than done, but one of the key skills that founder need is to learn how to navigate the ups and down, and how to keep that balance. And personally, the way I do that is by reminding myself that there are other more important things in life, like health, like family. So it doesn't matter what happened with Tint, things are gonna be all right. As long as the family, health, friends, those things are okay.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's awesome. Do you listen to podcasts?
I do listen to podcasts. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts when I was going to San Francisco. So I live in Mountain View, so it's about a 40-minute drive to San Francisco. So I used to listen to a lot of podcasts as I was going up and down. But the good and the bad news is that I have not been I have not had to drive much lately, so I can be a lot more efficient in my place. But then I fill the time with other things that are not podcasts as much
Yeah,
these days.
yeah, fair enough. What about books? Do you read?
I read, yeah. So this is something that I was this morning talking with a person on the team. Like, I do read books. I mostly focus on business books, so I see reading these days as part of um, my work. But I do read a lot. I'm kind of an avid reader. I have always been. I turned to think about the last time I read something outside of work was probably the Dune trilogy, probably, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. But other than that, I have been just
Yeah,
reading kind of business books.
yeah. Yes. So, any recent book that you read that you would highly recommend?
Yeah, I love the Principles book by Ray Dalio. I think I just finished Challenger Sales, which I think is very interesting. For going back to your question about sales, I think is a very interesting methodology. Um, High Output Management by Andy Grove is also a pretty interesting one. Yeah, I think those are the ones that I come to mind. But like, yeah, I can come up with a larger list if necessary.
That's a tough one. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, Mateus, really appreciate the time. This was very, really nice chatting with you. I think a lot of people listening are going to get a ton of value. So, thank you for coming on and chatting. Do wish you all the best, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for having me.
And if someone wanted to reach out, find you online, where's the best place to do that?
The best place is on LinkedIn. So if you search my name, I think I'm the only one out there. So you find it, and also www.tint.ai, and you can just click on contact us. We read everything people send, so that's another good route.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you very much. That'll be all in the show notes. And Mateus, thanks again. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.